I do though. I mean, like the discussion and the point that I would make about like internet dating and everything. I have had a preference for it for a while, and I know that that operates in the complete opposite sort of way that a lot of people are finding out about. I This is so difficult to actually talk about online because it just feels like ghosting, and I hate the idea. I hate it, but you know, like back way back in the day, like maybe it has been a while and everything as far as all that's concerned, but I've never really. I guess you could say that like I make it out to be a bigger deal than it actually is, and that's to a huge extent my own fault for not going out and meeting enough people and mingling. Like that it took so long to actually find and replace my ex and everything. But when I look at this and when I look at what's going on, I mean, I know that there are problems with like the dating apps and everything, and I wouldn't recommend them even to somebody that resonates with my own feelings in this regard because the dating app experience has been like it almost feels like the moment that you set the intention of a website explicitly to be about people hooking up, people immediately throw up their guard, so to speak, and it's like it's a lot easier to go and do something like play a video game and do that for a considerable amount of period of time and then get involved with one of the end game, rating guilds and get involved with that and interact with those people, and you end up meeting girls that are part of the group. Because female gamers are not a myth, and you end up finding that out really quick when you start interacting with them over, Discord. It's a reality of the whole thing. If you want to meet somebody, it's a way to go about doing it, and it works a lot better than trying to fucking date women through, the dating the goddamn dating apps. It's a fucking nightmare. I mean, there are far more men on those applications than there are women on them. So you have to go where women actually are on the internet, and what they're actually spending their time doing, rather than trying to go on and do what the fucked up dating app market. It's just not worth it. Like the whole thing just kind of becomes a toxic brew of bullshit and crap. It's really just not a good way to find love on the internet. It's like, it very much feels like the moment that you set the intention of something as being, explicit, and explicitly intended for dating. Like what happens is a bunch of time wasters, for instance, show up, a bunch of people that, are like, will go on the app just because they're seeking validation and trying to spice up their mentality about, you know, if they've got market value. I mean, it's like all the dating apps, even the girls that are on them are, largely just there to waste men's time. And I mean, it's the truth of the matter. Like they troll them to actually waste guys' time and, suck up a bunch of energy. So it ends up being a pointless waste. And it's like if I've found love on the internet, I've never actually found it through any of the dating apps. That's just been my experience with it. It's always been, somebody that I found that when I was doing something that I already found enjoyable in cyberspace, and that's how we ended up meeting each other. Like even Nerd, it was like we were playing multi-user dungeons together. So when I look at this and when I look, at the history that I've had and the time that I've spent on the internet and everything, it's like I don't know. I mean, the truth of the matter about meeting women on the internet is like the women that you meet end up being a little bit different than women that you meet in real life. For instance, when you do things the way that I would go about doing them, they tend to be filtered. They tend to be a little bit nerdier, a little bit more intelligent, so to speak, than the women that I was, encountering back in high school. I guess you could say. I I, I feel very much so like sex was on the table at one point. I feel like I was, I remember my fling with Leslie, who I don't talk about very much at all. I remember going through that, hanging out on the the grass outside of some of the malls down there in Orlando, and just going over to the place, watching Dirty Dancing together, a bunch of other things that happened. But you know, the thing about doing it in the real world was it just kind of felt like women get this mentality in their heads, and it's largely like if she's had a boyfriend before, that guy kind of has and makes an impression on what to expect, from guys and what it's going to be like. And it's like if this girl has a lot of experience dating men that are like very, very like desperate to get laid, so to speak, and not really at all interested in much of anything else, then already you're setting up an expectation that's just not what I'm actually like, and it was like the way that things felt, and had come had manifested even during my time in Florida. It was like, if you did find somebody that was interested, and God knows that that doesn't come and happen every single goddamn day, but it does happen, and it was like when I found that person down in Florida, it was like so very much so in your face sexuality. Like, do you like it rough? Sort of questions being blowing up my, very outdated phone at the time, or whatever it was that we were communicating with as far as technology was concerned, and a bunch of these kind of questions. And it was like, Jesus Christ, we're like fucking 16. Like, what are you doing to my, you know what I mean? Like, it was that sort of like feeling, in the whole thing. And then, it was a let's cognitively like calm down and think about this and think about why this whole thing fell apart. And it's like it was probably like this question of whether I even found her attractive enough to actually do, that with, you know, like it kind of came across like what I was rejecting was her, and in reality it was just like, I don't feel ready to have sex. I don't feel like this is. I feel like this is too sudden. Like I'm 16. We're too young for this sort of thing and for that kind of seriousness. And then, of course, pretty soon thereafter, it comes out that this person's had an attempted, has already suffered, like literally having to go through an abortion at one point in her past, and it just, it caused me to kind of flee for the exits at that point, because it was like, I don't have a problem with abortion, but I'm pretty sure that I don't want to hold somebody's hand through it, especially if I'm the reason why they got pregnant in the first place at like 17. It's just not, like, it doesn't seem like that's something that I really want, blood wise on my hands about all of this. And I mean, all this is really faithful, like, testimony about why it was that things were happening. I haven't seen her in years, but that was what was going on. And it was like it just sort of it pushed her through this filter that was like, you've got this new guy that's interested, in dating. He's interested in, all of that. And I just end up being the bloke that finds her humor funny and agrees with a lot of what she's, joking about. And I find that some of the stuff that she's, the edgier humor, like the more raunchy humor style that she has, to be pretty goddamn funny. And all that was going on. And then all of a sudden it was just all in my face about the sexuality of things, and it was just like, I'm of the appropriate age to be interested in that sort of thing, but I just, you know what I mean? Like, I'm 17, I've got a will of my own. I don't want this anchor, around me either. I don't want to be, in that kind of situation where it's like I have to talk her into it, especially if she doesn't want to, especially if, she, you know what I mean? Like, especially if she doesn't want to just get rid of the damn thing, like it's going to cause, some real problems as far as that's all concerned. And, it, it, we went our separate ways, basically, as a result of that sort of mismatch that was taking place between the two of us. And it's been a while, but I started to realize that I kind of prefer the way that things work in cyberspace because the truth of the matter is that the most efficient, like I've said this before, I've come up here and said this, but there are these crazy people who think that like I'll say that I agree with a woman in cyberspace because I want to get laid, but it, it's not really an efficient way to try to go about dating somebody, you know, to do it through the internet. It's one of the most inefficient ways to go about actually doing it. And the reason why you would opt for something like that is just that it forces people to actually get to know each other. I know, imagine that. And that's why I prefer it online.